right, it's time to talk with our featured guest, Dr. Simon Chard. Simon, how's it going?
Very well, mate. Thank you for having me.
No, man, thank you for being on. We truly appreciate it. If you don't mind me asking, where are you located?
I live in Surrey, so just south of London, in the suburbs.
Okay. Did you grow up there or no?
Yes, yeah. I've grown up in this area, so it's a nice place to live. It's sort of uh, countryside-y, but it's about a half an hour commute into the centre of London. So it's a nice mix of the busyness of the city alongside some nice outdoor lifestyle.
Nice. If you don't mind me also asking, like, where you're at right now, is that your home or is that your practice?
Yeah, it's my home. It's my dining room.
Guys, man, he's in a mansion. This is it. This is the West Wing of his. I'm excited to have you on, Simon. If you can tell us a little bit about your background, tell us a little bit about your past, your present. How'd you get to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll start at the beginning, I guess. So I'm from a family of dentists. Both my parents are dentists. My parents bought their clinic together 6 months before I was born. That's the same practice that my wife Megan and I bought from them back in 2017. So there's a sort of generational lineage of dentists there. I always joked that there was a mirror and probe in the cutlery drawer when we were growing up. So it's yeah, sort of in the blood. So that was my path. I actually went and did a different degree before going into dentistry. So I did a degree in pharmacology, so in drugs first, and then did my training at King's College London in dentistry. And then basically, as soon as I found dentistry, I found my passion. I found what I feel like I was meant to do. Um, and never looked back. From that point, I was very lucky at King's to have a variety of fantastic professors who sort of pushed you to compete, um, even from an undergraduate sort of student level. And that meant that by the time I qualified as a dentist, I already had a pretty solid CV, pretty solid sort of background of awards and prizes and experience, which meant that I could sort of hit the ground running when I qualified.
Oh, man. And then you already had your own practice. And then right now, I know you got your hands in a lot of things. I also follow Kyle. He's been on the podcast before, Stanley, right? Talking about Pearl and everything. And so I saw you and I was like, they're out here doing a lot of moves, man. Like, so what do you got going on right now?
Yeah, I mean it's a busy year. So yeah, obviously I run my own practice. It's a seven surgery practice with about 30 staff members now. So that's going very well. That's growing rapidly. Um, Primarily driven just through sort of organic social media and organic word of mouth. Not a lot of paid ads currently. I'm the president of the British Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, so that's the biggest academy of dentists in the UK, similar obviously to the AACD in the US. So I'm the youngest ever president of that academy, and I also own co-own a plastic-free next generation oral care brand called Parlour, which is in all the major supermarkets and stores across the UK, which yeah is doing very well. And we've got a whole team running that alongside it. And then recently, this last month, I won. I was voted the dentist who's had the most impact in dentistry in the UK in 2022 by Dentistry Magazine. So that was quite a nice award to win as well.
Yeah. How does that work? Do you, I guess, like submit or they just like randomly pick? You're just like, oh, I'm it. You just see your face on the thing or like,
Well, it wasn't even a. It's the first time they've done it. They based it off the sort of Time Magazine Person of the Year award,
Mhm.
and because it didn't exist, there was nothing to apply for. They, as a committee of sort of industry experts, came together and analysed all of the high profile individuals in the market, and very fortunately and very grateful to say that they chose me, which is yeah, it's nice because it's yeah, I mean running all these things sounds cool and oftentimes it is really cool because you get to win awards like that and we've had some amazing experiences with Parler, like we were on the in Dragon's Den, which is Shark Tank in the UK. So we were on national TV with that. So it has its amazing sort of really peaking, exciting moments, but it's also a lot of stress, and spinning the plates can sometimes all go a bit crazy, especially as I've got two young kids as well. So throw that in the mix and it all gets a little bit saucy sometimes.
Yeah, man. So you got a family too. Real quick, Simon, how old are you?
I'm 36.
Okay, man. Yeah, you got a lot of you know what I mean? Like everything going on. And we'll dive into that in a little bit later on in the episode. But if we could rewind a little bit, you did a degree in pharmacology. Why did you go that route initially?
Uh, Strangely enough, I think I listened to my peers at school, and there was this one kid who said, "Oh, you don't want to do what your parents did. That's really lame." For some reason, that stuck in my head, so I just always discounted dentistry as something I wanted to do. Um, and then actually, when I got to my first university to study pharmacology, coincidentally, my roommate was training to be a dentist. And I saw the community that he had and the practicality of being able to use your hands alongside science, which I've always been sort of fairly good at. Um, I sort of saw in that first term at university that really dentistry is what I should be doing. Thankfully, in the UK, you can complete your degree and then miss out the first year of dental school because a lot of it's just sort of basic science. And so basically, I did a fast track into dentistry from there, which worked out really well. And basically, I did a lot of my partying in the first degree, and then really got my head down and got to work on my dental degree, which for me worked really well.
Yeah. Okay, nice. So it's interesting. You did your parents by any chance say like, nah, Simon, like I don't care what your friend said. Like, trust me, we this is a good setup right here or something, or were they, yeah, do what you want.
No, they were chilled. I mean, they never wanted to push me or my siblings into anything we didn't want to do. So from that point of view, they sort of let me make my own decision. I also think, to be honest, that I if I had gone to dentistry at that first degree level, my grades probably wouldn't have been good enough. I wasn't particularly ambitious or um, academically talented at school because I didn't really have any focus or any drive. And actually, it was when I started at dental school that was the first time that I really sort of felt that I found my groove, and I actually started excelling and yeah, won all these awards and came top clinically in the year. And so I'm not a sort of a serially successful. I wasn't to that stage a seriously successful individual. Whereas now, sort of, I'm hyper ambitious and driven, which is yeah, very different to who I was as a teenager.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I feel like that's once you found, right, this is what I want to do, you went all in, right, and became ambitious. So kind of like right now, you're like, I'm finding things that I want to do and I'm going all in, right? And it's making you what's the downside of that? If you can let us know, like, hey man, it's great to go all in, but then this could happen if there is a downside.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a downside. I mean, funnily enough, my wife and I were talking about this on the phone as I was driving home from work. That I can't switch off. So there's always the next idea, the next business opportunity, the next product that I'm creating with Parler, the next thing I want to do to grow the practice. It's a constant state of progression and flux. And um, my view on that is, as long as you're enjoying the journey, then keep on driving and be as ambitious and shoot for the stars as big as you want to go. If you're grinding it out and hating the journey, then sometimes enough is enough, and you actually you need to be grateful whilst being ambitious. And I think it's finding that balance between gratitude and ambition that's quite difficult for sort of type A driven entrepreneurial individuals. Um, but I think for the younger clinicians listening, I have this. I don't think I made this up. I think I heard it somewhere, but let's just say for this call, I made it up. Was that I said yes to everything in my 20s, and said no to everything in my 30s. And for me, that worked quite well because when I first qualified, I said yes to every opportunity that was presented to me, whether it be a speaking gig, doing lecturing, or whether it be going to an event where I didn't know anyone. It was really awkward and I really didn't want to be there because I wasn't a naturally sociable individual at that stage. Um, Whatever it was, I just said yes, 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 yes. And what that meant was I just created this incredible network. I met so many people, many of whom became future mentors or future employers, because I worked in multiple different practices before coming in full time to my own clinic. Um, and so by saying yes to everything, I got this incredibly broad experience. However, if you let that go on forever, then it becomes unmanageable and you burn out, especially when you have kids. So in my 30s, I've now tailored it right in, and I'm very, very selective with what I say yes to. But I can only do that because I've got I've built it from that solid foundation of a network of guys from industry as well as sort of high profile dentists and people sort of who are the movers and shakers of our industry, I guess.
Gotcha. Okay. So you mentioned a lot about the journey, right? You got to enjoy the journey. Make sure you love it. How do you know, Simon, when you're just in a road bump in the journey and you're like, oh my God, this is a headache. I hate this. Or how do you know it's like, I'm not enjoying it anymore at this point?
That's a difficult question. I mean, I think you've got to know why you're doing things, and what your ambition really is. If you're just doing it for money, for example, then that will fade, and you will lose your passion for it. If the only passion there is the financial recompensation, then I think it's very easy to get jaded and um, to lose that drive. It's a personal thing at the end of the day. I mean, some people love dentistry, some people hate dentistry. Every job has its pros and cons, and I think we're very fortunate to um, actually do something that is genuinely meaningful for our patients, and that we get a lot of satisfaction from. But clearly, it has a lot of negatives as well because there's still such a massive issue with mental health within the profession. So I think it's really important um, that people don't just keep on driving because they think they should love it. Maybe taking some time away to actually create a bit of open headspace and then coming back to it and seeing if you actually want to go back or if you want to move away from it.
I like that. Creating open that space, right? Like, have you had to do that where you're like, oh man, I need to take some time, sit here and really think like, am I going to drop this or am I going to keep this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, I have the beauty of dentistry is that you can toggle up and toggle down the number of days that you're working quite easily. So I've done that clinically. I only work 3 days a week clinically now. The other 2 days I'm working on sort of more entrepreneurial endeavors. And so I've found a lovely balance. Certainly, if I was still working 6 days a week clinically now, I don't think I would be enjoying my job half as much as I am doing now. Um, and even saying that, sometimes it goes too far. I've got inbound emails coming in all the time. And if I'm in a 3 hour surgery placing implants, I'll come out and have 30 emails in my inbox. That's quite stressful and quite difficult to manage. So I think it's important to create space. The way I manage that is I try to travel as much as I can do. I try and block out times in my every month where I'm just going to be at home. I'm not going to be doing any social stuff. And I'm just going to be chilling with my family. And then around every 6 to 8 weeks, I'll make sure that I'm going away somewhere to travel, try to do a sort of as much of a digital detox as I can do. I'm obviously fairly active on social media. It's how I've built up a lot of my profile. And that's how still get a lot of my patients. But social media can be obviously a dopamine overload and very much all consuming if you don't know how to control it. So switching that off, controlling that so it doesn't control you, I think all those things are super important.
Where was the point in your life where you realized you had to do that? Where you're like, man, this is it. I need something, right? Something different.
Which part? Sorry, having those breaks
Yeah, like
or switching away from clinical.
so for example, sometimes it can happen where it's like you're like you said, you're talking with your spouse, right? And then they're like, man, you're always doing this. You're on social media, you're doing this, and then you realize like I need that dopamine. In the morning, I'm waking up. At night, I'm going to sleep. I need to check it in the restroom, all this stuff. So it's kind of like, when did you realize, oh, this is I'm going down the wrong path here?
I mean, I think I don't know if I've really cracked that yet. To be honest, I think I still have that dopamine addiction, and I think I just constantly want to be moving forward. And when you have the capability to look at your Shopify account on your direct to consumer business to see how many sales you've had, look at your emails to see if you've landed that new retailer listing, look on your Invisalign like doctor site to plan your cases. Like there's so much now that you can do all the time remotely. I think certainly for the last 5 years where I've been running the startup, been on the board of the BACD and running my own practice. During that whole time, I've really tried to control that inbound. And for example, I've not gone on TikTok intentionally because I just don't want any more things to check. And I know because I'm sort of all over the latest things in social media, and I can see the monumental power of TikTok. And I'm not saying that other people shouldn't go on it, but I've grown my business on Instagram. It's been very successful for me, but I've kind of pulled back a bit from where I was in that. Like 5 years ago, I've been posting every single day, grid post, stories, like just going like really hard on it. Whereas now, I think I feel like I've got to a certain level of achievement, so I don't need to continuously prove myself. And so I've tried to pull back from it a bit more than I have done previously, and really focus on just delivering sort of a few nuggets here and there, in essence.
I like that. Where does that come from? Where you feel like you need to continuously, or what you felt like you had to prove yourself?
Um, I don't know, to be honest. I think I've been like that since dental school. Um, I think I mean I have, like anyone, had a reasonable amount of trauma in my childhood. My sister had cancer when she was 7, which was a major sort of seminal moment in my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously in hers, thankfully she survived and is healthy and well and has 2 kids of her own now. But she was in hospital for 6 months. It was a serious incident for the whole family, and I think for me, aged 9 at that time, obviously I had in essence lost my parents as they were sort of looking after my sister. I think that there's probably some internal sort of desire to be seen, if I'm going to heavily therapize myself to the max here.
Yeah.
But no, I think at the end of the day, I mean, entrepreneurialism and business is a passion of mine. And so I want to be as successful as I can do, as I can be. And that's where I sort of derive my satisfaction from being a man and working in our industry, really.
Yeah. Man, that's sorry about your sister, man. Like that's really a light bulb moment. You know what I mean? For I think myself, for a lot of us, like in essence, when the parents' attention goes, you know what I mean, to like a one full kid. I never thought about that, Simon, until you mentioned it. Like you
Mm.
kind of do lose a bit of your, you know what I mean? Like the attention, not a little bit, a lot of bit of the attention from your parents, and that does stem where you're like, I need to work harder now for their
Yeah.
attention. And so you feel like that's where it kind of from that point on and then obviously magnified way more in dental school.
I'm sure it's played a part, but I mean, I think the thing is with success, when you taste a bit of success, you want that success again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, for example, I won best young dentist in the country in 2015, and that was an amazing award to win. But then I was like, right, that it's like gold medal syndrome, isn't it? It's you get that big peak of dopamine, and then you have the reverse crash the same way, and then you want to go again to get up to that same level. And that's why I say it's so important that you're enjoying the journey, because if you're only striving for that one moment of success, it's so fleeting that actually it's probably not worth it. Whereas if you're enjoying the journey along the way, as I do with entrepreneurship, I mean, building a brand, building a profile, building businesses, that's just play for me. That's fun. And so I don't look at that as being like, oh God, I've got to listen to this podcast, or I've got to come on this podcast with Michael tonight. I just look at that as fun, because I like to meet new people. I like to talk about experiences and all the various components that make up running a business in 2023.
Yeah. No, man. Yeah, I appreciate that. When it comes to the moments of success that you were talking about, what would you feel so far is not worth it when it comes to striving for? And maybe you see it on social media where people are like, yeah, you got to do your own startup. You're going to love it. And maybe you want to let them know, like, no, not everybody's meant for this, or not everybody's meant for that kind of thing.
I mean, I definitely agree that not everyone's meant to be a startup entrepreneur. It's incredibly hard, especially building I think you call them CPG brands in the US, right? We call them FMCG, but consumer packaged goods like Parler, like
Mhm.
toothpaste. Um, it's such a competitive market, and um, you're constantly fighting uphill. You're fighting against the biggest brands in the world, Unilever and Procter and Gamble and Colgate. These guys have got some serious money behind them, and so you constantly feel like you're running up an uphill treadmill, and the goalposts are always changing, especially doing it through a pandemic and now going into a recession. So it is a roller coaster of emotion. I think if you don't have a solid support structure around you, then it's not surprising to see so many startup founders have mental health issues. But I couldn't not do it. Like, I just have this fire inside me where I can't not execute on my ideas, and I have a million ideas every single day. And so I had to actually execute on one of them, and I'm really proud with Parler that actually we've done it. I mean, we've landed on we're in over 1,000 stores in the UK. We've got tens of thousands of subscribers online. So even if we fail from now, I feel like we've achieved what we set out to do. And I've sort of actually made a difference with this idea where, I mean, the reason we created the brand is that 20 billion toothpaste tubes made of single-use plastic end up in landfill or the ocean every year. So every tube of toothpaste you've ever used still exists somewhere on the planet. That's why we created the brand. So it's a plastic-free solution, and a zero waste solution as well. So I feel like I've made that positive impact, as well as creating what is a really cool brand and also disrupting an industry that is in dire need of disruption.
Gotcha. Wow, I didn't know that. Parla, what? Why that name?
So Parla means pearl in Swedish.
Mhm.
And we felt that the pearl was the perfect representation of what we were striving to do as a brand. So obviously we're designed by a dentist, pearly white smile, and then also the pearl of the ocean. We created the brand really to protect the ocean from single-use plastic. That's my happy place. That's where I derive the most joy, is when I'm on the ocean, in the ocean, by the ocean, and to see the level of devastation of single-use plastic across the world. I mean, anywhere I travel, I see microplastics all over the beach. I just don't want to see that get worse for my kids. And so Parla was my thing that I could do um, to actually make a difference in. I mean, it's dentistry is small, but toothpaste. Everyone in the world uses toothpaste in these single-use plastic tubes. So it is a big way that we can make a difference as dentists. And so yeah, hopefully that'll be part of my legacy.
Yeah, man, that's nice. That's beautiful. And so I kind of want to rewind a little bit. You talked about your practice, right? The one you currently have. 30 staff members?
Yeah,
You have 30 staff. And so there's nine operatories, right?
seven.
Seven, I'm sorry. Seven operatories, 30 staff members. Do you, let me ask you, the positions of all of them, you don't have to explain all their single positions or anything like that, but how does that look? 30 staff members.
Structurally,
Uh-huh.
oh, now you're asking. I mean, I guess we've got about 10 to 12 clinicians, um, but obviously part time, and then around 4 or 5 hygienists, um, about 5 receptionists, again part time, 2 practice managers, and 2 treatment coordinators. So that's obviously those figures probably don't add up to 30, but you get a rough idea on what the split's like.
Gotcha. And so you solely run it, or you and your wife is like the COO, or how does that look?
My wife's a dentist as well, and
Oh,
but yeah, she is basically the COO because obviously with everything else that I'm running, um, I'm more of the ideas guy, whereas he's more operationally working alongside our practice management team to make sure everything runs smoothly.
okay, that's good. And so you mentioned you grew it, or actually, let me ask you, how many new patients are you getting a month, if you roughly know?
About 50.
50? Okay. And so organically, you grew this through social media, right? That people are finding you through social media?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a nice setup in the practice where obviously my parents have been there for 35 years. They grew it from a 1 surgery to a 5 surgery practice, and then we grew it from a 5 surgery to a 7 surgery practice with a an additional scanning room and training center as well. And so it has this nice base of a local reputation with a large patient base. But then on top of that, obviously, I've brought in the specialists, the technology, the CEREC, the iTero, the focus on cosmetic and implant dentistry. So I've brought in all these additional offerings, which means that we can service all of those existing patients with additional dentistry. But then on top of that, yes, um, I mean, my following on Instagram is nothing major. It's only about 27,000, but it's I've been very successful in certain instances with working with influencers, um, with them still paying for treatment, but but receiving a discount in exchange for some activity, and that's led to a lot of organic growth of patient demand. I think also because I was on Instagram dentally very early on, just because photography is a passion of mine anyway. Um, I I sort of leveraged on most of the alpha of Instagram, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Before now, I mean, it's incredibly saturated now. Everyone's doing Invisalign whitening and bonding on Instagram, certainly in the UK. But it still drives patients, and still I have patients coming from around the UK, around the world, flying in to have the dentistry because they like my specific style of dentistry, which I was talking about this on another podcast recently. I think about the fact that the thing that I love about social media with dentistry is that actually by the style of dentistry that you do, you attract a certain clientele of patients. So my style is very much uh, a natural aesthetic. So my patients in general want to have a beautiful white smile, but they don't want anyone to know they've had their teeth done. Whereas there's certain areas of the country and certain dentists who carry out more sort of flashy dentistry where there's less texture and more flat incised ledges and less translucency, and those patients almost want everyone to know they've had their teeth done, if that makes sense, as
Mhm.
sort of like a show. And so I don't really get any of that second group of patients. I only get the patients, and they always say to me, "I've come and see you because I like the style of dentistry you do. I like how natural it looks, etc., etc." And so that's just a really nice self-selecting vehicle for my patients, where firstly, they already know me from a personality point of view because they've seen my profile online and they've seen me talking to the camera, etc. But then secondly, actually, the clinically we're on the same page as well. So from that point of view, it's worked quite well for me.
Yeah, man. So then what can you give us as far as like advice when it comes to, because you've seen that, right? Where people are like, man, Simon, I'm trying to grow my Instagram page and I have like 100, and it's just like, other dentists following me, but I want like my community to follow me, new patients to get new patients from it. What do you recommend we do from like, if you can give us instructions, how to start from this point and continue to try and grow?
Um, well, whether or not Instagram or TikTok is the right place to do that, I would probably say TikTok now, given how much more reach you can achieve. Um, After obviously just saying that I'm not on TikTok, so I mean that's fairly hypocritical, but that is the truth that TikTok
Mhm.
is the place that you should be playing in right now. I think the key thing with social media in general is you need to be not thinking about what you want. You want to be thinking about what the viewer wants. And so when you're producing content, think about who you're producing that content for, and then create content that's going to give them value for the things that they want. So instead of just putting up a before and after, for example, fine, put up a before and after, but then add on to that, right, this is how I did this. These are the steps. This is what's involved. Try and give more behind the scenes, more real stuff, not necessarily reels, even though reels is what you should be doing, but I mean more real content, as in more behind the scenes. I think the best way to be successful on social media is to be true to who you are as an individual and just be as honest and real as you can be, because I think people fall into the trap with Instagram dentistry where they try to just replicate what they've seen has been successful with other individuals. And then all that happens is that everyone just starts looking the same and it just gets very, very dull and boring. I think the more you can be yourself and unique to you and your own values and your own personality, the more you'll cut through. So I think by following those two things of thinking about what value you're providing to the consumer and to the viewer, and also just being true to who you are as an individual, that's the way that really you should be thinking about content. And then you just need to be doing it at scale. I think people are too sort of blasé with how they produce their content. When I was doing it properly, I was having someone in every single month for a whole day to generate that content, and it was a serious operation. And we were looking at what was working, what trends were working, what was successful, and then putting our own spin on it. And as I say, trying to add value to the consumer with the way we delivered it, and that worked very well for me. And I think if you were to implement that on, and I've seen this with lots of young guys in the UK, they've been incredibly successful with TikTok. If you can mass produce and batch produce that content, then it can be really efficient, and you don't have to think about doing it every single day. You can preload your posts and using buffer or later or something like that, and just have them running, and then you can just sort of set it and forget it. I say that, but then you really need to be engaging and communicating with your community if you want to grow it. So you, after it's posted, you probably do need to be on there, liking, commenting, and communicating.
Gotcha. Do you still do that right now? Are you like having somebody once a month come in or?
No,
Gotcha. Okay. You right
as I
now
say,
you
I'm
just
I'm,
push.
I'm very lazy now.
You're doing a lot, man. That's what I'm thinking. Like I feel like you're doing so much that you can kind of like take pictures, you know what I mean? And then just on your own, share it.
Yeah, I mean, I think like as I say, I it's probably not the right way to be, because I think this is like the classic pathway of like Blockbuster and Kodak, where they become very successful and then they die because they haven't adapted with the times. And I'm certainly doing that at the moment. But I think at the same time, you've got to look at the realities of your own life. And for me at the moment, the most important thing for me is I've got two young kids, and I want to be spending as many hours of the day and the week as I can do with them. And so something has to give, and I have to be respectful of my time and not push myself, because I know, just because I know I can do something doesn't mean that I should do it. For example, I know that I would smash on TikTok if I really went for it properly and started producing content at scale. But I also know that's going to take me a day a month, and I literally don't have a day a month. I mean, my diary is I have a PA, a personal assistant, and it's literally blocked out by the minute. I mean, there's no room anywhere, and so that doesn't mean that I neglect my health or my family or anything like that. It just means I've blocked out my gym session every day. I've blocked out a therapy session. I've blocked out meditation. I've blocked out family time where I'm not on my phone. Um, but if I'm going to add anything else into that, then something has to come out. And at the moment, there's nothing really to come out to add that into.
God, man, Simon, you're very aware, right? Like of your time, you're very aware of like you're very specific. Why? How did that come to be?
Um, well, I think it comes back to learning where to say no and being respectful of your time and actually knowing what your life values are. I mean, um, my as I say, my main focus is that my family is everything. I will never get this time back when my kids are uh, at this age, and once it's gone, it's gone. And I've heard so many successful individuals say that their only regret is that they didn't spend enough time with their kids when they were young. Um, so that's my main focus with regards to my personal life. With regards to my professional life, I'm very, very clear now on what my values are with regards to that as well, which is that I only want to be doing stuff um, that I enjoy and that I feel is meaningful, and I only want to do it with people that I love. And so that's how I make my decisions um, on how I move forward. Is that I don't I have to be very, very careful with what I say yes to. And if it doesn't help me with one of those things, if I'm not doing it with people that I enjoy spending time with, if I don't enjoy it, or if it's not allowing me to progress with something that's meaningful in my life, then I'll just say no to that opportunity. So, for example, if a brand that I'm not particularly keen on gets in touch with me and asks me to do an Instagram post and they're going to pay me £1,000, I'm not going to do it because it's going to take time out of my day. I don't. It doesn't fulfill my ambitions. Do you know what I mean? Even though it's easy money in many ways.
Yeah. That's the thing. Do you think this kind of can apply at any stage in our lives? Or you know how like at the beginning you said when we're grinding and we're trying to say yes to a lot of things. Do you think it can't apply there? Because if you say no to, you know what I mean, like what I don't want to do, then you're not growing kind of thing. Or what are your thoughts?
I think it's got to be personal to you. I think I think awareness and self objectivity is the really important thing, and you've got to know what your diary looks like, and then tailor your attitudes to where you're at in your career. Um, for sure, you want to push yourself outside of your comfort zone as much as possible. And I still do that now because I know that that's where the growth area is. I mean, God, I've learned so much in the last 4 years um, on through running Parlor uh, talking with retailers and margins and marketing and CAC to LTV ratio for my performance ads. I mean, there's so much stuff that I've learned in the last 4 years that is way outside of my comfort zone that I've had to just think on my feet, like pitching to five dragons uh, on live on live recorded TV for 2.5 hours. I mean, that's pretty far outside my comfort zone, but I've learned an incredible amount from it, and it's created incredible opportunities. So I'm definitely not saying that you shouldn't say yes to as much as possible when you're in your early stages. But I think it's just when you have lots of time pressures and lots of opportunities, you have to learn when to start tapering that in because there's only 24 hours in the day and 7 days in the week. And so you can only do so much, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. Ton of sense. Okay, so one of the last questions I kind of wanted to ask you, one of them, right, is throughout this time, your wife is a dentist, right? She's also operations, like the whole, I mean, she does all right, a lot, right? When it comes to running the practice, family, everything. And then
Yeah.
you, same thing, doing a lot, visionary. When it comes to your personal life, I don't know, do you guys ever agree, like, all right, at this time, we're not going to talk about anything work wise, none of that stuff? Or is it more like, yeah, you know what, let's, whatever. If it comes up, it comes up. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Or is it like, don't ever stop, enough kind of thing with each other?
You might get a different answer here from me and from Megan, but no, I think one time that we're very careful with is the time just before we go to bed. So we always make sure that we're not like dropping like, oh, this hygienist just handed in her notice like just before we go to bed or something, or like not, because sleep is so important to us both, and we try and sort of slow down the brain in that pre bedtime. So I'd, like that section is certainly sort of demarcated as not being appropriate for dental chat. Um, but in general, I think that Megs and I are both very honest, open people. And if we're worrying about something, then we will just talk about it. I mean, I very much wear my heart on my sleeve. If there's something wrong with me, then everyone around me, unfortunately, will know about it. And if I'm happy about something, everyone will know about it. And so I think we have a very open and honest relationship where we're comfortable talking about whatever. Um, I don't think either of us gets. It's not been necessary to have that conversation to say these are the times when we talk about this, these are the times when we don't, because firstly, that's not the reality of owning a small business. Things come up normally when you're on holiday, and you have to deal with them sometimes. So that is just the reality of running your own business. That's what you sign up for. Um, but also we enjoy it, and it's part of it's part of the fabric of our relationship. I mean, it's certainly not the majority of our relationship, but we've been together now for 13, 14 years, and it's always been. Obviously, I met her on the first day of university. We graduated together. Dentistry's always been a part of our relationship, and so and now businesses as well. And it's nice to learn new things together and to grow together. So I think we look at it very much as a positive.
Nice. You met her on the first day of university? You're
Yeah,
like, this is, you're it. You're the one that's how it
pretty much. Yeah.
went. That's, and she was like, yeah, I guess. Yeah, you too. Yeah. So that's good, man. That makes me happy, Simon. And then last question is, throughout this process, let's talk about from the moment I guess you decided to not open this practice, but like take over your parents to like today, right? What's been some of your biggest struggles, fails, or pitfalls?
I mean, the biggest struggle was the pandemic, to be honest with you.
Mm.
Um, Certainly that day when I had to call my team and tell them all we were closing. I mean, that was a very emotional day. And yeah, a lot of tears, a lot of anxiety around um, when we were going to open again. We had terrible information from our governing bodies, very poorly disseminated. I mean, we found out we were going back to work on the BBC with everyone else, and they said dentists will be open or healthcare providers will be open in a week. We're like, is that us? Are we back in action here? Like we had no protocol. Like it was awful. It was a constant battlefield. But
Mhm.
um, no, I mean I'm a I'm a very emotional person, so I feel the ups and the downs very viscerally. But I am a huge advocate that the hard times are what you need to go through um, to get to the successful parts of your life. And yeah, I think certainly. I mean, whenever something bad happens in any of our businesses, we're always just like, we'll put it in the book. We'll put it in the book one day when we write a book of our story. And so I think that's a good way to look at it. Is that nobody who's ever run a business, ever run their own business, has ever succeeded their way to success. They've always failed their way to success. And that is just what happens. You've got to build that resilience, and you've got to just understand that your favorite associate's going to hand in their notice, or that patient who you tried your best for is going to complain and sue you or whatever. These things are just the reality of life. Life is not fair. Life is not just. But you have to build that resilience and sort of push through. I read a lot of Stoic philosophy, so I read. I don't know if you're familiar with the Daily Stoic book
Mhm.
from Ryan Holiday, but I read that every morning as part of my morning routine, first thing. And yeah, I love Stoic philosophy for looking at a lens through which to look at the hard times in life because we're all going to have them, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And you got to build that resilience, like you said. When it comes to reading, I guess, is that the one that you're on right now? Like, as far as, or is that what you do in the morning for like, and then you read other things?
Yeah, I mean, I only read the idea with that book is that you just read one quote and you sort of let that sink in and process it as opposed to sort of rattling through. So I've been reading that for I think 3 years every day. So I read one quote every morning. It's literally the first thing I do. And I even travel with it. It goes everywhere with me. Um, so yeah, so that I wouldn't really class as reading. The book I'm reading right now is called How to Invest by I think his name's Daniel Rubenstein. Um, which yeah, it's quite interesting. I'm quite interested in sort of angel investing and that sort of thing as potentially part of my ongoing career. Obviously with my sort of deeper understanding of building a startup now. And looking for ways to sort of diversify my portfolio moving forward. That's quite an interesting area for me. So yeah, that's a book that I'm reading currently. And then the book that I always recommend to everyone, which I just think is so good, is The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. It's just an amazing book. It's just such a well-rounded view on life. I think everyone should read it. It's so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I just finished it. I want to say December. Really good book. Yeah.
I read it.
But
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
wicked. I've
Awesome,
read it.
Simon.
It's the only book that apart from Daily Stoic that I've read more than once because I just wanted to get that knowledge again.
Yeah. When you reread it, like for example, the Daily Stoic, do you feel like where was this? I didn't see this
Yeah,
last year. Do you feel like that?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, you're not in 100% concentration mode reading the book the whole way through, right? Like you're floating in and out, and you'll pick up different bits. But at the same time, sometimes we just need reminding, right? Like especially with the Daily Stoic, it's so easy to let whatever the current storm is to distract you. But I think it's good to go back to those sort of classic philosophies.
Yeah. Nice, man. You need to start a book club. We'll join. And kind of get your suggestions. But awesome, Simon. I truly appreciate you coming on. If anybody has any questions or concerns or they just want to reach out to you, how can they find you?
So Instagram's probably the best place. My Instagram handle's at Dr. Simon Chard. Um, and then yeah, that's probably it really. Just send me a DM on Instagram and I'm normally on there a little bit too much.
Awesome, awesome. So, guys, that's going to be in the show notes below. And Simon, thank you for being with us. It was a pleasure, and we'll hear from you soon.
Cheers, man.